Welcome, folks, to the second off-season edition of the No Conference for Old Men podcast today, where two of the three old guys here have a special guest in University of Houston Senior Associate Athletics Director, Executive Director of Development, Alvin Franklin, joining us for a bit of Q&A. We've had lots of Cougar fans voice an interest in this whole topic of NIL and the house settlement, so it's really timely that we've been able to get Alvin onto the show. For fans that may not know, Alvin's been at UH since 2023, but he'd already had a very impressive and extensive journey advancing in college athletics prior to joining the Cougars. Just before coming to Houston, Alvin had spent 2 years in the SEC as Associate Athletics Director, Development, and Team Lead at Mississippi State. Prior to that, Alvin had spent 2 years in the Big Ten as the Director of Development, Major Gifts at Purdue University. In addition to those stops, Alvin had also had a couple of stints at South Alabama and UAB to begin his career in college athletics. Alvin also has 2 master's degrees from Purdue and Mississippi State associated with sports, college administration, as well as leadership. So super impressive guy. And I'm fortunate to say that Alvin is also my designated Cougar athletic representative. Welcome to the podcast, Alvin. And thanks so much for taking time out from your busy schedule.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, so we've actually gathered up some questions amongst ourselves and from listeners as well. But anything you wanted to say to kick things off before we get right into the questions?
Well, I just wanted to say it's been a you say been here since 2023. It's one of those things where I feel like I've been here like 5 or 6 years. But it's been
Like
it's,
dog
it
years,
hasn't
right?
quite been 2 yet. But it's been a fun ride. As someone who grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, and has spent, you mentioned a couple of stops I've made, and they've mainly been in college towns. So someone who transitioned to a huge metropolitan area, this was a true transition for me. But it's been great. Our fan base has welcomed me, embraced me. The university has taken me, with open arms, taking me in with open arms. We are starting to really, really, hit on all cylinders right now. It was one thing to have a plan, but to execute it, you got to have the right people around the table. And right now we are putting together, a really, really good staff to really carry Houston athletics to the next level. So we're really excited. Eddie Nunez has been here since last August, and his energy is infectious. And he's a high energy guy, and so am I. So we kind of match with one another, and we're ready to roll, man. We're ready for it. It's here. Football season be here in a couple of weeks. We're ready to roll.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I've thoroughly enjoyed working with you as well. You've been awesome and fantastic and super responsive. So we're lucky to have you, man.
No,
So,
thank you.
Agreed.
Hey, so going into the questions, obviously we finished our second season of the Big 12 now. The whole athletic department has had to step up their game to match our new peers now from both a performance and financial support perspective. And at the same time, the world's basically changed at this point with the House settlement finalizing on June 6th, a new governance structure in the College Sports Commission being put in place, and now all these IL deals being required to go through a Deloitte-led clearinghouse for approval. How are you and the rest of the athletic department at UH dealing with all these rapid changes? And how do you think we're performing against our peers at this point?
So, this is something that we knew was coming. So we started to really get our ducks in a row, really in the winter, right at the start of the new year. So starting in January, we didn't know exactly when the judge was going to sign off on it, but we knew it was coming, right? So we were prepared. We have a really, really strong compliance team. Lauren DuBois and her team have done a great job of not only preparing the staff, administration, but they've done a really good job of educating our general counsel's office and our coaches and also our student athletes. And then the charge is also being led by Dave Williams, who serves our senior deputy athletic director, who came over to Houston from New Mexico with Eddie. And they've been kind of the two-headed monster, Lauren and Dave, to lead our efforts when it comes to the house settlement and revenue sharing. And what does this look like for U of H? We have, one of the few schools, not every school is operating like we are, where every student athlete will get something. That was really big for us we're going to start sharing revenue with our student athletes, but are we going to be, one of the schools that chooses to only support one or two sports, or maybe 3 to 4? But here, we're creating a championship standard, and every sport matters, right? We want to be good across the board. I call it the 8 to 5. People talk 8 to 5. That's the work day, right? That's 8 to 5. I said, no, 8 to 5 for us is August to May. We got to find a way to be really good at our 8 to 5. That's August to May. And when I look at structure, we are right now. We have a really robust system when it comes to really getting the student athletes onboarded when it comes to their long form contracts with revenue sharing. So that is in place as we speak. And then from a actual NIL structure standpoint, now with the new rules, they've kind of changed the term to third party NIL. So now, our student athletes there has to be some type of business component, a deliverable, as one may say, for a deal to be passed. The third party group through Deloitte, there's a clearinghouse now. NIL Go is the system it's called. And so now every deal has to go through NIL Go for approval. And there has to be some type of component, whether it's a student athlete making an appearance, is an autograph, is it social media involvement? There has to be some tie to the business for the deal to be passed. And so we have an internal NIL committee that we put in place, and then also bolstering our efforts when we think about Learfield, who a multimedia rights partner. We're going to have a full-time position there to help coordinate when that, let's say, for instance, if TDCU is already a big sponsor of ours and partner both on the university side through the athletic department through Cougar Pride and also with Learfield. Now we'll have somebody in the room that's also said, hey, TDCU, this is what a partnership from an NIL perspective looks like. Let's figure out a carve out in this contract for NIL for our kids. And then also we're still finalizing the structure, what Cougar Pride would look like at some point. And we will have some individuals on this side as well, working with our constituents and stakeholders from an education and alignment when it comes to NIL.
Okay. I mean, we've read about some challenges with the clearinghouse as well, right? Especially for deals that are tied, let's say, directly to the third party NIL collective, right? Where it doesn't have great visibility to the actual business value, right? To your point, or kind of a contribution that the student athlete is making to warrant kind of that NIL deal. Are we seeing any of those challenges with our deals, like what we've read about?
Right now, no.
Okay.
And I would say
great.
that's not to say that it won't happen, right? Because this thing's still evolving by the day, right? New rules and new legislation is coming out each week. Even since July 1st when it went into effect. We were really, really prepared on the front end. Really, really prepared. Now we don't have a high volume yet. We've been it's kind of like I'm gonna use some football terms here because everybody's getting ramped up now. The media days passed, but we're right now. You think about fall camp, right? When football reports in fall camp, the first couple of days they're in short and t-shirts.
Yeah.
They're shirt and shorts, right?
Yep.
That's kind of we're in this. We got a helmet on, we got a t-shirt on, some shorts right now, right? And we're teasing the system, deal here, deal there, and then we'll add some shoulder pads here soon, and then we'll go full pads, start hitting here in a couple of weeks, as the kids, more and more of our student athletes start to come back to campus, and we get our staff fully hired. You'll see a big influx of more deals being more visible for Houston athletics.
Okay, awesome.
Nice. Okay, well, here I'll jump in next, and a lot of what I'm going to bombard you with is coming from fans and people with whom I've spoken and asked to submit some questions. So we'll start with this. A lot of people feel as though NIL is, and I know Steve's term is a kind of a black hole. Heard it, referred to as the Wild West. So, maybe you could spend just a bit of time helping to educate our listeners on what all the changes with NIL are going to mean. Maybe correct any misconceptions. Because I would imagine, even some of the donors that are out there, prominent or otherwise, still kind of hold on to the old student athlete model and have a hard time kind of reconciling with the new era. And if you want to address that, that would be great.
Well, the thing now that people have to understand that revenue sharing and NIL are two different things.
Yeah.
And that's
true.
the first piece that, that's the fundamental concept that people have to understand is revenue sharing. It's a part of the house settlement. Yep. Okay. Right. And with that, when it was passed, every school can opt in or opt out of the settlement. It's a settlement, right? It was a lawsuit that settled. Okay. We, along with every school in the Power Four, opted in. So we opted in. So we have a cap, as you say, of $20.5 million. Now, what we had to determine as an administration is what does $20.5 million mean to us? Meaning, how are we going to disperse the funds? So we had to work internally as an administration together first, and then collectively with our head coaches to communicate, all right, men's basketball, you'll get X. Football, you'll get Y. Baseball, you'll get Z. And so on, right? And so now once each sport had their number, then they worked with one another to figure out, all right, our roster size is this. We have this many student athletes. What are we willing to give each kid? And that payment essentially is coming from the school, right? That is coming from our revenue sharing is comprised of a couple of buckets. There's NCAA distribution. There's the conference distribution. We have ticket sales, not the donation tied to it. So the Cougar Pride membership doesn't count. You have licensing, merchandising. We have, kind of our ancillary revenues, concessions, alcohol sales, outside events like UFL. Those are revenue streams that you can pull from to equal up to your $20.5 million. Now that's revenue sharing. Okay. Now on the flip side, you have NIL. NIL is really where you kind of create your competitive advantage because every school, our 20.5 million is the same from revenue sharing that Texas got.
Yeah. Everyone
that
else.
LSU got, that, Florida State got, Washington State on the lower end with us, Boston College, everybody has the same number.
Yep.
So your competitive advantage is NIL, right? How can you get enough third-party deals to subsidize kind of the gap per se to be nationally relevant and competitive? That's the difference. So a lot of people think it's all still the same. Where that's where we number one, we got to educate people that this is totally different. Now, where people donors can really help us, some of these people that have asked these questions, right? We've started a fund called the AD Excellence Fund, right? And this fund is managed by Eddie. This isn't Eddie's salary. This isn't Eddie buying a new car. This is strictly strategic planning, spending by athletic director for him to make some key decisions, right? Because in a way, you think about everybody was talking, if we could just get to year 3. 2 years ago, fiscal year 23, we knew it was going to be pretty tough, right? Coming into the Big 12, competing against schools that have been at our level for a long time. And we were going to be a partial share member from a rev split with the league, right? And so the first 2 years, the first year was 18 million. The next year was 19 million, which was last year. And then this year we're going to be full share.
Okay. It is full share.
Saying, if we could just get to year 3, we get to year 3. Well, boom. Now we get hit with a whammy a year ago of here comes revenue sharing. And so, we are full share this year, but a lot of that is being taken away because we opted in and we're going all in, right? You can't tiptoe in this thing. You can't dip a toe in the water in college athletics. Nowadays, you got to jump in the pool. If you're toe in the water, it's not going to happen for you, right? And so now people can give to the AD Excellence Fund because that is the fund we're using for a couple of things. Think about it 3 ways, right? It's strategic planning and spending for things that, probably would have happened if we would have had all of our revenue from the Big 12 come in to help support our operating budget. That's one way to look at it. It is also, we have to, at some point, we are now turning the page to having to create a reserve. You all have read about our financial challenges that we've experienced over the years when it comes to the amount of debt we've gone into. We got to play off the debt, but in the same sense, we got to create some type of reserve, right, for emergency spending for later on, right? So if you get in a situation, I hope this never happens, right, because we have really good coaches, and they're all going to coach here for 50 years and win a bunch of national championships. But if you get to a spot where, one day, years down the line, right, if you get to where what we had to do in the fall of 23, we didn't have a reserve to support that hard decision of letting Coach Holgerson go, right? So this also supports the future of reserves, facility maintenance, things that we built these nice facilities, but we got to take care of them, right? So that they last. That's why the reserve is so important. So you got, strategic spending to put some money back in for Eddie to make some decisions. You got facility maintenance, some reserves. That's the second prong of this. And then the third is actually we're preparing for what's next, right? The cap's not going to always stay at 20.5. At some point, it's going to rise. And when it goes up, we got to be able to go up with it. And so that's, people can really get involved there, right? So that's going to be huge for us. Now, the next part of your question, we talked about rev share, but you asked me about NIL. The third party NIL is essential. We're in Houston, Texas, right? This is entrepreneurship capital of the world, engineering capital of the world. This is where business is at an all-time high, right? It's one of the top 5 cities in the country when it comes to actually economic growth and actually, people being able to support these types of initiatives, right? We need our people that are business owners or decision makers at businesses to really, really help us here. And that could be deals of any size. There's no deal too small. There's of course no deal too big, right? And we really need people to really self-identify themselves, raise their hand and say, hey, I want to help.
Okay.
Got it. Okay. Here's the question that's probably been asked of me the most, or at least the statement that's been presented to me the most. And that is, with NIL, has college sports effectively become no more than yearly unrestricted free agency, where the student athletes are they're certainly gonna work hard and do everything they can for their school and their team while they're there, but do they effectively have one eye on a better deal that they can potentially negotiate at another school? And there's one college basketball player who started at the University of Wisconsin, went to Kansas, and now he's AJ Story's now in his 4th school in 4 years. And a lot of the fans feel like that's kind of killing college sports as everyone had become accustomed to knowing it. And how do you feel about that?
A couple of things. I think that the new legislation is actually making things better than they were in this Wild Wild West era the last 4 years of NIL. Because every year, essentially, you were starting over at zero, right? Everybody's trying to get donors to give as much money as they can and fill the pot, right? Fill that bucket, fill that pot up with a lot of cash. But once the pot's filled up, the coaches are promising it out and then paying it out from the collective. And then at the end of the season, you're starting all the way back over again, having to raise it back again, right? In an era of revenue sharing, right? And the kids know if they do their homework, and a lot of kids, a lot of them have advisors and agents, and their parents are paying more attention than ever to what's going on. If your school is opted in, if the school is opted in and is a full participant in revenue sharing, you know you're going to get something, right? So now the worry of, will I get a deal or not? That now worry, in a sense, have somewhat been lessened and kind of gone away, right? So now it's better than it's been before. Now, does the transfer portal still exist? I think now it's not so much about the NIL, it's about the NCAA. That's the next step of them wrangling in the transfer portal rules and figuring out what are the windows, right? Should there be, for football, should there only be a spring window, right? Instead of there being one in December, which affects bowl games and affects postseason play tremendously the last couple of years. And then, now just being a spring portal, because the way they got it set up now, there are kids that can leave in, right at the season, and they'll enter the portal December 1st, enter the portal, go to a school, they can go play spring ball somewhere, and then enter again as soon as spring's over.
Yeah, we saw that too.
Right.
And so that now is to me the next step. But I think the legislation is put in place, and I think now also this, you all can know this from two people that have been in careers. They say, as you get older, life's about relationships, right? And so now, to me, with the third-party NIL mechanism in place, it is not just being a payment coming from a collective. And there are kids getting paid from the collective, and they never met the people who are actually giving them the money.
Yeah.
A donor could give, somebody could write $100,000 check, send it to the collective pay the kid gets to know the collective, but they never met the donor, right? Now, with the third-party NIL being placed, and there being an actual deliverable involved, the kid now is building rapport with the actual company and the business.
Mm-hmm.
So the retention rate now should go up, you would think, right? And we're 21 days in, right?
Hope. Yeah.
We're 21 days in, but you can see where the mechanisms are in place for this to get better.
Yeah. Yeah. At least some guardrails, starting point of guardrails at this point, right?
For sure. And but the next step, I'll be honest, the next step is a transfer portal. Figuring out the windows and the necessary probably quantity of portal periods is something we got to really look into and figure out. That's the next step.
Yeah. Are the kids, are they now considered W-2 employees? Are they 1099?
Well, essentially, through revenue sharing, it's a licensing agreement with the university, and so the kids they're 1099. Yeah. They get a 1099 at the end of the year.
Yep.
To pay their taxes. Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So contract workers, basically, and we see that all across the university. I know there's this constant debate on, do they have to become employees? But just like every other business, your working staff is made up of, a certain percentage of employees, and in many cases, still large percentage of 1099s as well. So I don't know why that wouldn't work, but that seems to be a constant debate.
Got it. And I know that some schools have they're set up internally to support the student athletes now, in terms of, the business related things, the money, everything. And some schools just say, look, go out and bring in your own business advisors, do that. What's the setup at U of H to support the student athletes with the money and everything that they're, working on now?
So with that, we have a really good, let's start with first student athlete development, and we're slowly morphing that into something else as well. But we had a partnership that we announced in the fall with Chevron. And so Chevron has a naming rights on our student athlete development leadership program. And so within that, we have a community engagement vertical. There's a vertical for professional development and a vertical for personal development. Now, within the professional development piece, there's a financial literacy component, which also relates back to our partnership with TDCU. So we do have, a financial literacy, financial education component to prepare our student athletes, for these conversations, and they know exactly, how to manage the money and understand how the money works. So that's very important for our listeners and people to know, is that we're just not saying, hey, little Johnny, come play ball here. Here's some money and play. We're really
Right.
looking to the holistic growth of the student athlete from the time they get here to the time they leave.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think when we talked with Lauren as well, I think maybe some of the sports programs themselves also bring in maybe some
Yes.
advisors as
Yes.
well, because I
Yes.
know
Yep.
the men's basketball team has that to help them with managing
Yes.
their funds and
Yes.
planning for taxes and things like
hmm
that. So
And football and men's basketball are two leaders in that
yeah,
component, because let's be
Right.
honest, they're receiving the bulk of the revenue sharing,
Right.
so that's more important for them. And then some kids have their own financial advisor and representation, especially the ones that are getting you know um, you know higher payouts. Those kids are have have representation. But I will tell you, our staff does a really good job. The individuals that are very involved in the contracts with our student athletes do a really good job of walking them through the language and really explaining what each line item means and why the language is there, and answering any questions. And I'll tell you, every kid, that the beautiful part about this, every kid doesn't sign the contracts all at once. Kid has questions. There's no, feet to the fire. No, you got by this day. We've been very patient with all of them to make sure that they understand the language. There's a difference between the short form and the long form contract,
yeah.
right? Here's a short form, but let's get to this is the difference between the short form and the long form. So,
No, that's great. Hey,
yeah.
Perfect.
Alvin, you had you'd done a great job in terms of describing the difference between kind of what NIL is versus revenue sharing. And on the NIL front, obviously that's going to be variable, right, per athlete, because let's be real, a star athlete is going to generate more interest, right, for NIL deals and things like that. And you had mentioned earlier in the conversation that for the revenue sharing portion, right, as an athletic department, you guys have come up with whatever our formula is, right, for how much football gets, men's basketball, women's basketball, and for each of the sports. Now, within each of the sports, is it, for their pool of dollars, is it even distribution uh, by player, or is it by some other algorithm?
Some sports do it differently. There are
Oh,
some
interesting.
sports, we have some sports that are wanting to do the, even distribution.
Okay.
But, we have some that are, depending on the player and the recruit, are structuring theirs based on basically priority and need.
Okay, so they have the wherewithal. At least
Yes.
currently, there's
Yes.
no strict rule in saying, "Hey, for that pool, you have to evenly
No.
distribute." You
Yes. Yep.
within the sport, you can determine how you distribute that. Oh,
Exactly.
interesting. Okay.
Will will Title IX play a role or be involved in the revenue sharing?
It's still, that's one of the things,
CBD.
there are three prongs to Title IX, so it's up to interpretation to figure out, which prong are you determining? Are you deeming worthy of how you did and why you did what you did?
Gotcha.
And we were in all transparency kind of not in balance with Title IX when it came to our scholarships. So part of the revenue share in the house settlement, any new scholarship that you added counted against your cap. So we addressed a lot of our scholarship numbers this cycle
Okay, that's
to
great.
add more scholarships for our female sports. So we did
Okay.
add scholarships on the female side. Yep.
Okay, no,
Gotcha.
that's fantastic. Hey, so prior to the house settlement, the big dollars and investments into athletic departments seem to be focused on facilities, right? And it was the same at U of H as well with TDECU Stadium, the indoor practice facility for Tita Center, Guy B. Lewis Center, and now finally the football ops building. Now, as the landscape has shifted, what is the most important thing? I mean, is the driving factor for success now shifted to more the NIL/ revenue sharing versus the old adage of build it and they will come?
Well, I think it's more so, facilities are still important, but we have it. We we just launched our newly Nance Leadership Society. So on July the 9th, we went live with the Nance Leadership Society. Really, really key initiative for us to
awesome.
really engage more people, get more people in more long-term, commitments to the department. You think about an annual fund, the word annual, year by year, going back to the way NIL was through collectors. It was an annual fund. We were starting over at zero every year. Now the baseline, to give you all an example, the way we looked at it is, let's say you get, $15 million in major gift commitments, and they span over 5 years. So you're getting, in cash, you'll get, $3 million year one, $3 million year two, year three, year four, year five, right? For the 15 million. But then the next year you repeat it. So now in year two it's compounded. Now in year two you got 6 million. Now in year three you got 9, then 12, then 15. And now you keep going. So by year 5 of this deal, you got, that 15, a total of 15 million on top of your annual fund coming in. But by the way, people had a great experience. Now we're starting all over again. And now those people are coming out and they want to stay in. So they got to sign a new one. Right. And so we look at this as really, it's a mechanism to really, really catapult us forward. And so if we listed out 3 main priorities right now for our department. AD Excellence Fund is number one. And guess it's really how the donor, it's really donor intent, right? We're not swaying somebody to do it one way or another, but we listed them out 1, 2, 3. AD Excellence Fund being number one. I kind of explained already how that works. Number 2 is student athlete success. And this is everything that touches our kids. This is mental health. This is sports medicine. This is nutrition. This is athletic training. This is academics. And this is student athlete development, which is preparing our kids for life after sports, right? So somebody may say, look, Alvin, team, I'm not interested in AD Excellence Fund. I think that all that's going to help pay the players, and I'm not interested in that. I care about, the kids' well-being. Great. We still need you, right? So we got a bucket for you. And then bucket 3 is what we're calling the Houston Athletics Facilities Initiative. And that's going to, as you said, we're really done building right now. But like, for instance, the football team has operated part of the Athletics Alumni Center for a long time. Mm-hmm. They're moving into the Football Operations Center. We're going to get almost 70,000 square feet of space, that they've been utilizing in some form or fashion. We're about to repurpose the Athletic Alumni Center to make it more functional, more conference rooms to make our meetings more efficient. We're going to give our Olympic sports better space. We're going to do, utilize the weight room in a different manner. Those are things that help our athletic department. So we look at the Football Operations Center project, people look at the football project, but no, it was an entire athletic department project, right? It does so much for our department. So bucket 3, the Houston Athletics Facility Initiative, is for us to figure out how do we repurpose our spaces, make them more functional, and enhance them. To not only enhance the experience of our student athletes, but our staff, which leads to staff retention, and also fan engagement, right? So that's how we're prioritizing really the philanthropic and financial needs of Houston Athletics going forward.
Okay. Hey, so Alvin, let's say that third bucket that you've talked about with facilities, are donors still going to have the wherewithal to say, hey, I want to donate within that pool of dollars, but I want to make sure it goes to, let's say, a specific facilities project. Are they going to be able to do that? Or is it just a general fund that you don't know where it goes to?
Yes, we spell it, and that's why we do gift agreements. We spell them all. We spell out the terms clearly so that, the donor knows exactly what the intent of the funds, how they're being spent. And it's a full document, and it's signed by general counsel. It's signed by, Dr. Couture. It's signed by Eddie. It's signed by, the head of finance for the university. We make sure that the terms are spelled out and it's signed off on, so that we make sure that we honor the donor's intent for the funds.
Okay. That's awesome. So, from a performance perspective, and we're a college basketball podcast, so we usually focus on the men's basketball team. And so obviously we've had another record-setting year this year with the team, came just shy of winning the national championship. And so there's been a lot of success since Coach Sampson's been here. Now, with the changing landscape and this whole dynamic with NIL and revenue sharing, um, our assumption is obviously, donations typically are strong when performance is high, and the hope is that we've been able to generate a lot of donor interest on that front, and we've seen that with the retention of star players, as well as being able to attract new ones. So we're assuming that that's the case. But in general, how difficult has it been to retain athletes, especially in basketball and football? And then, we use the word culture a lot, program culture a lot, and how much of a difference has that made in terms of the retention factor?
Well, I would say I feel like the retention piece, it's not, I wouldn't use the word easy and make it seem like it's been seamless, but I think it's been easier than most programs. And it's because of the word you use, culture, in relation to both programs. We have two of the best leaders in college athletics on
Agreed.
both of those. I mean, you think about Willie Fritz and Kelvin Sampson, right? They're two men of high integrity. They say what they mean what they say. And so there is a buy-in from the kids once they're here. To they know they're part of a system that's not just, some players, feel like it's all about the coach and they're being, in a way, used. Here, that's not the case. They know that our coaches have their best interests at heart. And that has led to kids. I mean, we have multiple players in both basketball and football, in all honesty, have been offered, more money to be at other places, and they've decided to be
Right.
here. And it's because of that word culture that you use. It's not just a saying; it's a standard of how we do things, right? And those two guys and their staffs do an amazing job of laying the foundation, being honest during the recruiting process, right? And laying out a plan for each player, and making, it's, you talk about peer pressure and, the families get involved and Uncle so-and-so gets involved. But when the coaches are honest in the recruiting process up front, and they see the coaches actually living by what they said in the beginning, these kids have seen no reason to leave. And now when you think about things like we talk about the Chevron student athlete, leadership program and the different partnerships that we've created, we're creating a better experience for our kids on and off the field. And so now they're seeing a sense of not just my coach or my team, the athletic department is starting to put their arms around these kids, in a holistic manner. And that's helped tremendously as well when we talk about retention.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's fantastic. And, we're big fans of the coaches that we've got on board for the main revenue sports. But, now we've had quite a few changes on the women's side, right? So beyond football and men's basketball, we've now seen new coaches being brought on board for women's hoops, women's soccer, as well as women's softball. Now, is NIL playing as big of a part, NIL and rev sharing, playing as big of a part on the women's sports side as well? Are we seeing a similar dynamic there as well? And how are we doing there now, especially with new leadership on board?
It's playing a part. You see now, especially and when you speak about women's hoops, and you look at, we look right down the road, and we look at, LSU, for instance. They won a national championship recently, a couple years ago, and they've had high visible players, people that have, kids that have been on a national scene that have gotten really big NIL deals, right? And in a way, and the Caitlin Clarks of the world and the Paige Bickers of the world, they've changed the game when it comes to women's college basketball and the visibility that it now has, right? But it's also twofold. It's also made it easier for our coaches to recruit, especially here, right? Mm-hmm. Coach Mitchell has something to sell when it talks about, being in this area and the visibility that you can have if you come and perform, right? Softball, we see what just this year long, Texas Tech want to play for a national championship,
Yeah.
Right? It had their best season in school history. They went and bought one player.
Yeah. Big time player, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and they had support, but people forget that they had a supporting cast.
Yeah.
They had multiple players that were all conference players that got something right. And so now the focus is for us with making sure and revenue sharing is helping. We got to make sure every kid's getting something, right? That's going to help tremendously. Where before, I would be honest, that was not the case. But it's something that's prevalent. It's on our mind, and we want to make sure that we can provide all, not just those three sports, but all of our female sports, women's sports, with the resources they need to really compete at a high level.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. I think that's all the questions that we had. Was there anything else that we've missed on this topic of NIL or revenue sharing that you feel like we should be covering here?
I think we covered a lot. I think that people have questions, right? A lot of people have a lot of questions, right? And the last thing that myself or the rest of our staff wants people to assume. And that's why, one of the things we implemented this year was the Cougar Athletic Representative Program. And so now all of our Cougar Pride members and season ticket holders have their own representative,
Yeah,
their
awesome.
own personal contact, right? Utilize it. The mechanism is in place for a reason. If our people have questions, they see something on social media, don't hesitate. Don't think that, we're too busy. That's our job, right? To be a resource for our fan base. Right, we want our fan base to feel as connected as ever back to this athletic department right now, and that's something that I really want to welcome as people to understand. And if they don't know who their representative is, please reach out to me, and I will make sure that they know who their representative is going forward.
All right, no, that was awesome,
Nice.
Alvin. Very enlightening for us, and I'm sure it will be for our fans as well. Thanks again so much for taking the time out. So that's it for this episode 53 of the No Conference for Old Men podcast. Hope you all enjoyed it. And again, would really appreciate it if folks would follow, subscribe, or collect our podcast, depending on your podcast platform of choice. We're also available via the Republic of Football podcast feed from the folks at Dave Campbell's Texas Football as their only basketball-centric podcast, or at the GoCoogs.com website for those that prefer to digest the content that way. We appreciate the continued support from all. Also, please give us a follow on our Twitter account, No Conference for Old Men. And again, we are in our monthly cadence now during the off season, but please stay tuned as we're working on trying to get some coaches onto the show for some in-depth off-season discussions. So please be on the lookout for the next episode to download and listen. Take care, everyone.